Yo, what is up, guys? I am back with another video, and today I'm going to be reacting to top 15 true ghost stories. So yeah, let's get to the video.
15. My now ex-wife and I had just gotten married and moved into a new neighborhood. We moved in the winter, and as spring came, we noticed there were multiple dead animals, birds, squirrels, and raccoons in the yard. We cleaned them all up and started to do improvements to the outside of the house and painting on the inside. I started to notice strange things going on. Keys not where I left them, stuff like that, small. I thought I was just being forgetful. Then things slowly started to escalate. Well in bed, I could swear I could hear a barely audible conversation, like a radio in a far room. As soon as I would try to focus on it, it would go away. I started to hear footsteps at the other end of the house. One night, while laying in bed, I heard a huge crash, which woke me up out of dead sleep. I went into the kitchen and saw my kid's hamster cage on the floor about 15 feet from where it was. We put it on the fridge at night because we had a cat and didn't want it getting to it. Now I know what you are thinking. Cat knocked it off. But this cage had to fly over a breakfast bar and a kitchen table to get to its resting place. Then things got ugly. I would be sitting at home watching TV, and I would have this uncontrollable thought. What would it be like to be possessed? Or, I want to be possessed. I couldn't get this thought out of my head. Couldn't concentrate on anything but that. I would literally have to say in my head, I love God, I love Jesus, over and over to get this original thought out of my head. I need to add that I am not a religious person. As soon as I would leave the house, I would be fine. Not one thought. But as soon as I pulled in the driveway, it would start up again, uncontrollably. I thought I was going crazy. I sat down with my wife and looked her dead in the eyes and said, I think I am going crazy. I've been having weird thoughts. She turned white, and before I could say anything more, she said that you want to be possessed? Come to find out, for the past month, she's been having the exact same thoughts. Then we started to compare stories. She told me that she was laying in bed without me. I worked nights at the time, and she could hear a man whispering through the baby monitor while our child was fussing. Needless to say, we moved out within the month. Her oldest daughter was still in school, and we had moved across town. I had to pick her up at that house on my days off when she got dropped off by the bus. As soon as I turned the corner, I would get those thoughts. I would sit in my car in the driveway and not even go inside and wait. Number 14. My friend's dad is an ex-Marine. He has been a paramedic, firefighter, and security guard, so there's practically nothing on earth that can frighten this motherfucker. His family used to live in a very old house built in the 1800s. One day, my friend's dad was at home alone, waiting for the rest of the family to get back with dinner. Now this man is the most honest man that I have ever met. There would be no reason to lie about this. He was sitting on the couch downstairs when he says he heard footsteps coming from upstairs. He walks down the main hallway and looks up to the banister for the upstairs hallway. He then said that there was a shadowy figure that glided across the upstairs railing from one side to the other until it was out of view. Right after he saw the supposed apparition, he heard the loudest, most blood-curdling scream he had ever heard in his life. Immediately after the scream, all of the lights in the house went out and he found himself standing in the pitch black. He then ran out to the front porch and waited for the rest of the family to return. My buddy said that when they got back, he remembers the horrified look on his dad's face. He said he had never seen that look on him and has never seen it.
I don't know if you guys heard that, but there was a car alarm. Alright, let's get back to the video.
Since. Number 13. My nephew lives with me in an old farmhouse built in the 1820s. When he was about 4, maybe 5, he told me that there was a little boy named Charlie who lived in our house. He said Charlie had never heard of video games and that Charlie's dad left him home all by himself. This was around the same time he had an imaginary friend named Mr. Cat, so I wrote it off. A couple of weeks later, I was shaving with the bathroom door open and thought I could see my nephew kind of looking in at me out of the corner of my eye. I stuck my head around and could see him from behind messing with an old china cabinet we keep important stuff in, and just as I walked into the room, I could see my nephew sitting in the living room watching TV. He couldn't have crossed that much distance that fast or silently. I asked him about it, and he said, "Oh yeah, that was Charlie." He said there's a really super book in there from when you were a little boy. And at the bottom of the stack of old documents and stuff in the china cabinet is a book I got as a gift when I was a kid. I didn't know it was there. It was under 2 boxes of documents and couldn't be seen until the boxes were lifted out. The little boy wasn't transparent. He didn't float. He didn't look spooky. He just looked like a kid. Number 12. My dad once told me a story about one of his cousins. The cousin used to live with his family in an apartment building. On the floor above them lived an old widowed woman whose young son, around 24 or 25, served in the Indian Army and had died during a bomb attack somewhere in North India. A few weeks after the funeral, my uncle started having dreams about the son who had died. Tell my dad and his mom that the son keeps knocking on the door in the dream and just stands there once the door is opened. He had the same dream for 2 weeks straight until one night before dinner he opened his front door to go down to the lobby and saw the son standing in front of him. He quickly shut the door, freaked out for a few minutes behind the door, and opened it to still find the son standing there. I'm not sure what happened right after, but my uncle then started seeing the sun inside his apartment, and then one day it just stopped. Number 11. I have a co-worker, male, aged 45, who is a no-nonsense sort of fellow. He doesn't hold much with silliness and doesn't believe in ghosts. So he and I both work at a very fancy antique business. Our boss is a 3rd-generation dealer. His personal collection rivals the best in the world. Because of this, when he goes away, he doesn't just have a security system, but a house sitter as well. The job of house sitter almost always falls to my coworker. The house is located in rural Connecticut. It is a circa 1780 center chimney colonial. It was originally built by a prominent and wealthy family in this corner of the state. The house has a couple dark and ominous, fully substantiated stories attached to it. The one that is most relevant to this story, however, relates to a young son of the family who lived in this house circa 1820. During his late teens, he developed a mental illness. Based on the stories surrounding him, one could assume it might have been schizophrenia. Anyway, the family, not knowing what to do with their violent and unpredictable son, locked him in an upstairs bedroom and fed him through a hole that was cut in the wall. The patched hole is still clearly visible, as are the deep gouges in the wood paneling of the room, supposedly the result of his assaults on his surroundings. After a few years, the son managed to hang himself in the room. Last winter, when my coworker was house sitting at night, he came into the shop one morning as white as a sheet, clearly shaken up and exhausted. He proceeded to relate to me his experiences from the previous evening. He had been sitting downstairs in the keeping room at about 10 p.m. watching TV. He started hearing strange sounds coming from upstairs, movement and shuffling. He turned the TV off so he could listen better. The movements continued for about 30 seconds while he listened. He decided a bat must have gotten into the house. not uncommon in an 18th century building. As he climbed the back staircase to investigate, he distinctly heard a man's laughter coming from the bedroom at the top left of the staircase, the bedroom where the son had been imprisoned and committed suicide. He said all the hairs stood up on the backs of his arms. He describes the laugh as not good, not happy. At this point, he lost all desire to investigate further, scurried back down the stairs, and poured himself a tequila and water, which he slowly sipped while listening to the occasional shuffle or bump from the bedroom. He slept downstairs on the couch that night. Number 10. My grandpa on my mom's side died way before I was born. At the time of his death, my parents had 3 children. A night soon after the death of my grandpa, my mom and dad were in their room lying in bed, and she was crying to him when she said, "Who's gonna take Dustin, my oldest brother, fishing now?" Immediately after this happened, they heard a sound of glass breaking coming from outside their bedroom door. My dad grabs his shotgun and leaves the bedroom to check things out. When he steps out of his room, he notices a picture frame lying face down on the floor. This picture frame was supposed to be above the fireplace, about 20 feet away from his bedroom door. He picks it up, and it's a picture of my brother and my grandpa fishing. He put the house up for sale the next day. Number 9. My dad's side has stories. He used to tell me stories of his old house where he grew up. There are a couple of stories he told me, and they were also backed up by his mom and brothers when I asked them about it. Apparently, stuff happened to them too. Story goes that he was around 10 and home by himself reading comics in his room. As he was reading, he started to hear footsteps coming from the kitchen area. He was about to go and see if it was his brothers or parents coming home, but he got stopped dead in his tracks when he got an overwhelming sense of fear. As he was debating on whether or not to go, he started hearing what sounded like large, heavy coins dropping into a bucket full of more coins. This went on for less than a minute. He was torn between wanting to go out and see what the sound was, and between being scared to shit. He ended up sitting in his room until he heard his dad drive up. There were a couple other stories they told me about the house. Strange noises, dishes falling out of cupboards, shadows running around outside, a lot of crazy other stories. I never was allowed to stay with my grandma at the house by myself, and always got a really weird feeling when I would be by myself in their back room. Always got a feeling like there was someone there with me. Supposedly it was haunted. The man who lived there before had been in World War II, and upon his return committed suicide in one of the rooms. My grandfather, strangely enough, committed suicide in the backyard of the same house. My mom lived in the same house with my dad when they were first married. At the time, my dad's brother and mom still lived there as well. My mom told me how one time she was sitting in my dad's old room and heard my dad's brother drive up the driveway, open the front door, and head into his room to start lifting weights. She heard the weights clank together for a good couple of minutes before she decided to go outside. Everyone else was out of the house at the time, and she thought he was the first to come back home. But once she opened the door, the weight stopped. She went to talk to my dad's brother, but there was no one in the room and no car in the driveway. As she was standing there, trying to figure out what she had heard, she said she saw my uncle's car drive up. The other was again when my dad was a kid. He was laying in bed sleeping when he saw his other door open and a figure that looked like his mother come in and sat on the bed with him. It was pretty dark, so he could only make out the outline of the body. He fell back asleep. In the morning, he asked his mom why she came in like that. She told him that she didn't go into his room. The creepier part to this story is fast forwarding to when I was young. My brother got up one morning to get some water. When he walked out to the kitchen, he saw what looked like my mom sitting at the kitchen table drinking coffee. He went and sat at the table too in the dark and started talking to my mom. She did not reply. This goes on for another minute or so, and my brother decides that he's tired and that her mom is still half asleep as well. So he starts to go back to his room, and as he does, our parents' bedroom opens and my mom walks out. Now my brother, creeped out as fuck, turns back to look at the table and does not see anyone there anymore. After that, he refused to get up by himself, never told our parents why. Oh, and to add to the weirdness, my dad committed suicide around 8 years back as well, shot himself under a bridge. Number 8. I had a good friend die when I was 10. We'll call him John. He died pretty tragically too. He was hit by a car literally right in front of my house when he was chasing down a ball that bounced into the road. Fast forward 7 years, I'm babysitting my little sister and she is playing outside. I'm on the porch swing reading and she's shooting hoops on her little Tykes hoop. The ball bounces onto the road and I look up to see her yell, "Don't go after that ball, John." Freaked the shit out of me. She never knew about John. I asked her who John was and she said it was a kid that would play with her sometimes outside. Number 7. When I was a kid, I did yard work for this incredibly lovely old couple. They told me that when they moved into their house, they had to empty out a few of the rooms and closets of the previous owner's stuff. After that, they heard bumping sounds like someone wandering around the house in the dark. They called the previous owners to ask if the sounds were a normal thing. "Oh, you emptied out the upstairs closet, didn't you? Just put the cane back in the closet so he can see where he's going. Without it, he just stumbles around bumping into things and making noise." They put the cane back and the noises stopped. They left it in that closet for over 30 years until they moved out. I was helping them clear the house when I saw this cane. It was a pretty normal wooden cane with a rubber knot on it, but it had these scorch marks on the end like someone used it to poke out a fire. Then they gave me it. Number 6. Okay, let me...
Alright guys, I'm gonna leave this video here. I am gonna make a part 2. So yeah, if you guys like this part 1, make sure you guys leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe, and leave a like, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.